Chennedy Carter was once seen as one of the rising stars in the WNBA, a dynamic scorer, an aggressive competitor, and a player who could change the game in an instant. But now, she's sitting at home, unsigned, unwanted, and facing the brutal reality that no WNBA team wants to take a chance on her. Why? Because of one moment, one reckless, career-altering moment that had everything to do with Caitlin Clark. The WNBA isn't just ignoring Carter. They're blackballing her. No contracts, no offers, nothing. And it's not just about the infamous hit on Clark. Her problems go much deeper than that. This is how Chennedy Carter went from a future WNBA star to an outcast, and why teams now see her as more of a problem than a player. Let's go back to the moment that sparked this entire controversy. The cheap shot on Caitlin Clark. It was one of the most talked about incidents of the WNBA season. The Indiana Fever were facing off against the Chicago Sky, and tensions were already high. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation, had been drawing massive attention to the league, bringing in new fans, higher TV ratings, and an overall surge in WNBA popularity. But not everyone was thrilled about that. Enter Chennedy Carter. During a routine play, Clark was moving up the court, minding her own business, when bam, Carter blindsided her with a hard shoulder check, sending her crashing to the ground. It wasn't just a normal basketball foul. This was personal. This was meant to send a message. The arena erupted. Fans were stunned. The commentators couldn't believe it. Even the referees hesitated for a second, almost shocked at what had just happened. But Carter, she walked away like nothing happened. No apology, no concern, just a smug attitude like she had just done something impressive. And that was the beginning of the end for her. The league wasted no time reviewing the hit, and while Carter wasn't immediately suspended, the backlash was overwhelming. Fans called it dirty. Analysts called it unprofessional. Hey, you're playing against somebody like me. I classify myself as a dog. So if you're gonna throw a punch, and I'm gonna compete with you, I'm gonna play at the level that you're given. So that's just a player that It was clear. Carter had crossed the line. But instead of showing remorse or acknowledging her mistake, she doubled down. And that's when things really started to fall apart. If Chennedy Carter had owned up to her mistake, apologized, and moved on, maybe, just maybe, she could have salvaged her career. But that's not what happened. Instead, she made it worse. After the incident, reporters, fans, and even other players waited for her to explain herself. Was it frustration? Was it just a heat-of-the-moment decision? Would she take responsibility? Nope. Carter didn't just refuse to apologize. She made it clear that she didn't respect Caitlin Clark at all. She didn't see Clark as a star. She didn't think Clark deserved the hype. And most importantly, she didn't care what anyone thought about her actions. That attitude rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It wasn't just about Clark anymore. It was about how Carter handled the fallout. She didn't show any professionalism. She didn't seem to understand the bigger picture. Instead, she positioned herself as the villain, but without any of the on-court dominance to back it up. And here's the truth. WNBA teams don't want a player who brings drama without results. Carter isn't a generational talent like Aja Wilson or Breanna Stewart, where teams might overlook some controversy because of elite performance. She's a good player, sure, but she's not that level of star. And when a player has a bad reputation and a bad attitude, teams start looking elsewhere. But if you thought Carter's issues ended with Caitlin Clark, think again. Because the WNBA wasn't the only league where she had problems. With no WNBA team willing to take a risk on her, Carter tried to rebuild her career overseas. But instead of proving she could be a mature, disciplined player, she somehow made things even worse. She signed with a team in China, hoping to use the opportunity to showcase her skills and maybe earn another shot in the WNBA. But what happened? More drama. Reports started coming out that Carter was clashing with her coaches. She wasn't listening to instructions, she was arguing during games, and she was showing the same reckless attitude that got her in trouble in the WNBA. One particular incident stood out. Carter allegedly got into a heated argument with her coach during a game, completely ignoring their instructions and playing the way she wanted to. The result? She was benched. And not just for a game, she started losing playing time altogether. Think about that. Even in a league where she was supposed to prove herself, she couldn't stay out of trouble. At this point, WNBA teams started asking a serious question. Is Chennedy Carter even worth the headache? Her talent is undeniable, but if she can't take coaching, if she can't play within a system, and if she's constantly clashing with teammates and staff, why would any team take a chance on her? And that's exactly what's happening now. Teams are making their decisions, and they're all saying the same thing. Pass. Behind the scenes, WNBA executives and coaches have one golden rule. If a player brings more problems than solutions, they're not worth the trouble. And right now, Chennedy Carter is seen as exactly that, a problem no team wants to deal with. After the Caitlin Clark incident, executives around the league started talking, and the conversations weren't about how to get Carter on their roster. Instead, it was about how she had officially made herself untouchable. The cheap shot was bad, but what made things worse was her attitude afterward. She didn't apologize. She didn't own up to the mistake. Instead, she acted like she didn't care. That rubbed teams the wrong way. But let's be real, it wasn't just the Clark incident that made them turn away. Carter already had a reputation as a difficult player, someone who didn't respond well to coaching and had a me-first mentality that doesn't work in a team sport like basketball. Executives started looking at her entire track record, and the more they looked, the more red flags they found. Her problems didn't start in 2024, they had been following her for years. From her clashes with teammates to her suspension in Atlanta, Carter had built a reputation as someone who thought she was bigger than the team. And in the WNBA, where rosters are small and chemistry is everything, that's a deal breaker. One executive reportedly described her as uncoachable, and that's the worst label any player can get. If a coach can't trust you to listen, work within the system, and do what's best for the team, they're not going to waste their time trying to fix you. And Carter wasn't giving them any reason to believe she had changed. The Clark situation only confirmed what teams already suspected, that Carter wasn't worth the headache. She wasn't a superstar whose talent outweighed the drama. She was just another player with potential who couldn't get out of her own way. And once that perception sets in, you're done. Executives talk, coaches talk. When a player is blacklisted in the WNBA, it's not an official announcement. It's just an unspoken agreement that no team is going to take the risk. And that's exactly what's happening to Chennedy Carter right now. She's not being overlooked. She's being avoided. For anyone surprised that Carter is now being pushed out of the WNBA, let's take a trip back to 2021 when she was still with the Atlanta Dream. Because this isn't the first time she's burned a bridge in this league. When the Dream drafted her in 2020, they thought they were getting a future star. She had all the tools, quick, aggressive, a natural scorer. But within just 2 seasons, the warning signs started to appear. In 2021, Carter was suspended indefinitely for conduct detrimental to the team. That phrase is usually WNBA code for, this player is causing too many problems behind the scenes. Reports at the time suggested she was clashing with teammates, refusing to take coaching seriously, and isolating herself from the rest of the team. And here's where it gets even worse. When she was suspended, the Dream started playing better without her. That's the worst thing that can happen to a player with an attitude problem. If a team struggles when you're gone, they'll find a way to bring you back. But if they improve, that's when they realize they don't need you. By the time 2022 rolled around, the Dream were done with her. They didn't trade her for assets. They didn't try to fix the situation. They straight up waived her. Think about that. A WNBA team spent a high draft pick on her, invested in her development, and still decided that getting rid of her, for nothing, was the best move. That should have been a wake-up call. But it wasn't. Carter eventually got another shot with the Chicago Sky in 2023, and for a while it seemed like she was turning things around. She had a solid season and stayed relatively out of trouble. But then came 2024, the Clark incident, and the realization that Carter hadn't changed at all. When teams looked at her history, they saw a pattern. Suspension in Atlanta, locker room tension, clashing with coaches, and now, the dirty hit on Clark followed by a complete refusal to acknowledge her mistake. WNBA executives don't forget. They remember who causes problems, who is difficult to coach, and who disrupts team chemistry. And Carter's track record showed them everything they needed to know. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a repeat offender, and teams weren't willing to take the risk again. As WNBA free agency kicked off for the 2025 season, Chennedy Carter's name was nowhere to be found. Teams were making big moves, signing veterans, drafting young stars, building their rosters for a new season. But Carter, not a single team even considered signing her. And let's be honest, this isn't because she lacks talent. She's still a good player. She's still capable of contributing on the court. But in the WNBA, talent alone doesn't guarantee you a roster spot. The problem with Carter is simple. No team wants the drama that comes with her. She has proven time and time again that she is more of a liability than an asset. She isn't a franchise player who can carry a team. She isn't a generational talent like Aja Wilson or Breanna Stewart. She's a decent player who has made herself impossible to trust. And in the WNBA, where team chemistry is crucial and there are only 144 roster spots, teams don't need to take risks on players like her. There are plenty of talented guards who don't come with the baggage. Some of her fans might argue that the league is unfairly punishing her for the Caitlin Clark incident, but that's just not true. The hit on Clark was just the final straw in a long list of mistakes. She had issues in Atlanta, she had issues in Chicago, she had issues in China. This wasn't a one-time problem. This was a pattern of behavior that finally caught up to her. Now, she's watching from the outside as other players get signed, while she remains unwanted. She thought she could play by her own rules, ignore the warning signs, and still get another shot. But the league has spoken, and the message is loud and clear. Chennedy Carter is done in the WNBA. One of the biggest reasons why no WNBA team wants to take a chance on Chennedy Carter isn't just the Caitlin Clark incident. It's the fact that she's earned a reputation as uncoachable, and once that label sticks, it's nearly impossible to shake off. Carter's problems with authority started early. Coaches in the WNBA noticed that she had trouble taking feedback, whether it was about improving her game, adjusting her style of play, or simply working within a system. Instead of embracing the challenge and growing as a player, she resisted. She didn't want to adapt. She wanted to do things her way. The Atlanta Dream gave her multiple chances to prove she could be a team player. She blew those chances and got suspended. The Chicago Sky took a risk on her, and while she had a decent season, the Caitlin Clark incident and her refusal to own up to it proved she hadn't learned anything. Even in China, where she tried to rebuild her career, she clashed with coaches. Reports surfaced that she ignored instructions, argued during games, and refused to adjust her style of play. If you can't even humble yourself overseas, where WNBA players often go to prove themselves, what does that say about you? At the highest level, every WNBA player is talented. What separates the ones who last from the ones who fade away is how well they listen, adapt, and work within a team. Carter has made it clear time and time again that she doesn't want to be coached, and in a league where rosters are small and chemistry is everything, no team is going to waste time on a player they can't trust. She had all the talent in the world, but her unwillingness to listen has made her unplayable. Chennedy Carter might still think she's one of the top guards in the WNBA, but the league has already moved on. Look at how stacked the league is right now. Caitlin Clark is bringing in record-breaking numbers as a rookie. Angel Reese, Paige Bueckers, when she arrives, and other young stars are redefining the future of women's basketball. Meanwhile, veterans like Aja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu are still dominating. Where does Carter fit into all of this? She doesn't. Teams have younger, more disciplined players who are ready to step up and take those roster spots. Players who work hard, take coaching seriously, and don't bring unnecessary drama. The reality is, Carter's absence isn't even being noticed. The WNBA is in one of its most exciting eras ever, and Carter is sitting on the sidelines watching it all happen. She thought she could play by her own rules and still have a career. She thought she was too good to be replaced, but the WNBA is proving her wrong in real time. Is there any chance that Chennedy Carter can redeem herself and return to the WNBA? The short answer, it's not looking good. Once a player is labeled as a problem, teams don't just forget. If she were an MVP-level talent, teams might take the risk, but she's not. She's a solid player with major baggage, and in a league with limited roster spots, that's not enough. So what could she do? She could try playing overseas again, but after her failures in China, it's unclear if international teams even want to deal with her anymore. If she were to get another shot, she'd have to completely change her attitude, become humble, take coaching seriously, and prove that she's not the same player who clashed with teammates and coaches in the past. The other option, she waits for an injury or an unexpected opening in the WNBA. Sometimes teams get desperate mid-season and need to fill a roster spot, but even if that happens, she'll be on the shortest leash imaginable. At this point, Carter is running out of options, and the worst part, she did this to herself. If Chennedy Carter could go back in time, do you think she would handle things differently? Do you think she'd take back the hit on Caitlin Clark? Do you think she'd swallow her pride and apologize? Because right now, she's paying the price for all of her mistakes. She was once one of the most promising young stars in the WNBA. Now, she's a cautionary tale, a player who had everything and threw it all away because she couldn't control her emotions, respect her teammates, or play within a system. She thought she was untouchable. She thought teams needed her. But now she's learning the hard way that no player is bigger than the game. The WNBA is thriving and Carter isn't part of it. She bet on herself, but she bet wrong. And now she's sitting at home, full of regret, wondering if she'll ever get another shot. At the end of the day, Chennedy Carter's downfall wasn't about one incident. It wasn't just the hit on Caitlin Clark. It wasn't just the suspension in Atlanta. It wasn't just her attitude in China. It was all of it. A career full of bad decisions, unnecessary drama, and an unwillingness to learn. She had all the talent in the world, but talent alone doesn't keep you in the WNBA. Character does. And Carter, she showed the world exactly who she was.